So today we're talking about the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, which is a federally recognized religion in the United States, also in Australia and the Netherlands, I believe, but I could be wrong about that third one. I know that it's federally recognized in at least 3 countries. This began way back in 2005. And was really very of its time, actually. It was invented by a 25-year-old man. There are some sort of grosser aspects of the theology of the Church of the FSM that I don't talk about today that you can read about, that it just really seemed to have come from a 25-year-old man. One of the original tenets and requirements when discussing the Flying Spaghetti Monster, who's the noodly guy on the front of your bulletin. And if you're on Zoom, I encourage you to Google it because he's a silly looking, adorable deity. Was that when you were talking about the Flying Spaghetti Monster or praising the Flying Spaghetti Monster, you were expected to dress in pirate regalia. I tried to find a pirate costume, but I was unsuccessful. So unfortunately, I'm violating a tenet of this religion and I am not dressed as a pirate. However, this was not an original central part of the theology, but this is nearly 20 years in now, right? And so things develop and new elements come up over time as a culture develops. So there's an alternative to the pirate costume. This is a spaghetti strainer. We only have 2 strainers in our house, and this one went the best with my outfit and fit my head. So I have to stand very still to keep this on my head. So if it starts to bother me, I might take it off and just sort of wave it around for emphasis. Oh, here's a bulletin. It's also going to do weird things to the sound. Like if it falls, it cups the mic. So I'm not sure how long I'll be able to tolerate this. This is the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Right here. This guy with his noodly appendages and his eyeballs, and he's got 2 meatballs in the center. That's like the bulk of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. In 2005, physics graduate Bobby Henderson, who was then 25, wrote to the Kansas Board of Education. He was protesting a proposal to teach intelligent design alongside evolution in public schools. I can't tolerate this. Oh, geez. Okay. All right. I actually have a memory. So this was happening around the time that I was in high school. And creationism, I'll just wave it around if I get really impassioned. Creationism was infiltrating its way into biology curriculums. And I have a very clear memory, sophomore year of high school in my biology class. Vermont is a pretty liberal, progressive place, but that doesn't mean that there aren't pockets of conservatism or more conservative Christian communities. And there was a particular congregation where a lot of my peers went to church that was really pushing for creationism to be mentioned in our biology curriculums. And one of the members of that church was a classmate of mine in this biology class. And I remember really clearly towards the end of our evolution lesson, Mr. Kerrigan sort of sighing and saying, I have to tell you this. I'm legally required to tell you this. They're making me say this. Here's the creationism theory. And there was the slide, of course, with like the fish crawling out of the water, and then the fish gradually becomes a man. And that's a image that creationists use to dispute evolution. So I did actually experience around this time creationism and intelligent design infiltrating its way into the classrooms. So Bobby Henderson wrote a letter to a Kansas school board explaining that if intelligent design or creationism was going to be given equal time in classrooms, then the theology of the flying spaghetti monster, which was not a theory or was not theology, was science, in his argument, also needed to be taught. I'm going to read a long portion of this letter, which I encourage you to find and read in its entirety. Some find it hard to believe, so it may be helpful to tell you a little more about our beliefs. We have evidenced that a flying spaghetti monster created the universe. None of us, of course, were around to see it, but we have written accounts of it. We have several lengthy volumes explaining all the details of his power. Also, you may be surprised to hear that there are over 10 million of us and growing, and that was true. We tend to be very secretive, as many people claim our beliefs are not substantiated by observable evidence. What these people don't understand is that he, the flying spaghetti monster, built the world to make us think the earth is older than it really is. For example, a scientist may perform a carbon dating process on an artifact. He finds that approximately 75% of the carbon-14 has decayed by electron emission to nitrogen-14, and infers that this artifact is approximately 10,000 years old, as the half-life of carbon-14 appears to be 5,730 years. Bobby Henderson was a physics student, PhD student. But what our scientist does not realize is that every time he makes a measurement, the flying spaghetti monster is there changing the results with his noodly appendage. I'm sure you realize how important it is that your students are taught this alternative theory. It is absolutely imperative that they realize that observable evidence is at the discretion of a flying spaghetti monster. Furthermore, it is disrespectful to teach our beliefs without wearing his chosen outfit, which of course is full pirate regalia. I'm being disrespectful. I cannot stress the importance of this enough, and unfortunately cannot describe in detail why this must be done, as I fear this letter is already becoming too long. The concise explanation is that he becomes angry if we don't. How often have we heard an angry God used as justification of all sorts of things? So we are here today to worship at the noodles of the flying spaghetti monster because we don't want to make him angry, and because it's fun and silly, which is the larger point of the Church of the FSM. There is a misconception that the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is meant to deride or ridicule Christianity or religious expression more broadly. Members of the church vehemently refute this stereotype. Short-form documentary directed and produced by Alex Bale features an interview with Obi Knull, a Canadian citizen and minister of the Church of the FSM. If you would like to become an ordained minister in the Church of the FSM, it will cost you $59, and it will be considered a legitimate ordination. And I am resisting with every fiber of my being, not going on a rant about the meaning of ordination and how the internet cannot ordain you as a minister. I'm not going to do it. Okay. Knull, who is ordained by the Church of the FSM, eventually lost a year-long fight to be permitted to wear a pasta strainer, the religious garb of the followers of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, on his head in his Canadian driver's photo. In America, followers of the Church of the FSM are permitted to wear strainers on their heads in their ID photos, and I believe maybe even in their passport photos, because this is recognized as a religion by the US government. So at the end of the documentary, Canule says, I hope there will be a time when society is no longer surprised to see someone has a strange and unusual religion and that they are expressing it and they are happy. What may have begun as a rebuttal to the infiltration of creationism in public schools is now a global, legitimate religious movement with congregations and charitable organizations in multiple countries. One of the things, so we're having a spaghetti luncheon after this service today to pay our respects to the Flying Spaghetti Monster. If you Google Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster and you go to images, so many of the images are congregations having pasta dinners because it's something they do a lot. These are real congregations with real fellowship. And interestingly enough, Bobby Henderson has been interviewed quite a bit, and he talks about how a lot of the new converts to the Church of the FSM don't actually know the origin story because this happened 20 years ago. So it's just really, it's actually a very fascinating sort of study of how cultural things develop. So in studying the Church of the FSM in prep for today, I found myself charmed by the insistence from the followers of the FSM that you do not need to believe every bit of theology of the church. In fact, as Henderson has said, many people involved in religious communities don't actually believe in the inherent truth of their gospels. And to the followers of FSM, that's a-okay. What matters most is the community. It's not important that the creation story of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is cuckoo bananas. The core of the Church of the FSM concerns which religions are given special treatments by governments and which are not. The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster asks deep philosophical questions with a strong mix of fellowship and good-natured humor. And while we can be pretty certain their gospels aren't fully accurate, although Henderson was quoted in an interview, the interviewer said, "What's the one thing that you want people to know about the Church of the FSM?" And he said, well, that our religion is correct and theirs is not. So it's not unusual for folks who are members of the Church of the FSM to declare, that this is true, whether they believe it or not. It's true, and this religion is the right one, which we can all see the subtext there, right? So even though I feel pretty certain that the creation story of the Flying Spaghetti Monster is not entirely accurate, I do, when it comes to belief in God, and this is probably my hellfire and damnation Methodist upbringing, as smart agnostics do, I err on the side of caution, right? So we can't be certain that the Flying Spaghetti Monster didn't create the universe. And we've already heard from clergy within the FSM that the Flying Spaghetti Monster has a temper. So it's probably just better that we swallow the spaghetti, right? So here I am, unfortunately, disrespectfully, not in full pirate regalia, paying my respects. Better safe than sorry. And I will end my message with the Pastafarian prayer, which will also serve as a blessing for the delicious spaghetti lunch that awaits us, our noodly sacrifice to the Flying Spaghetti Monster himself. Let us pray. Our pasta, who art in a colander, Draining be your noodles. Thy noodle come, thy sauce be yum. On top, some grated Parmesan. Give us this day our garlic bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trample on our lawns. And lead us not into vegetarianism, but deliver us some pizza. For thine is the meatball, the noodle, and the sauce, forever and ever. Ramen. And together we say ramen. Beautiful. I hope we have satisfied the deity.